This is How to Grow a Decacorn, where we give you an inside peek into the real-time adventures of Kraken, a company that's on its way to being worth $10 billion. On this episode of How to Grow a Decacorn, we tell you exactly what it's like to work at Kraken. If you are interested in working at Kraken, or you're not, but just curious as to what it's like, then you're really going to like this episode. We look at the top 10 qualities of Kraken in terms of what it's like to work here. We talk about each one, discuss it, and give some examples. Hi, I'm Christina, joined by Jesse.
Hey, Christina.
Hey, Jesse. Hi, all of our listeners. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk about what it's like to work at Kraken.
I've been at the company since inception, so that's about 7.5 years now. Christina has been here for just about 5 years, so I think we both got a pretty good feel for what it's like to work here.
Absolutely, for sure. Both of us are, in addition to some other people, some other great people at the company, are passionate about the culture of the company and the people of the company. So I think we do have a pretty good idea as to what it's like to work at Kraken and what people like about it and what qualities about Kraken might not be for everybody, and that's okay. To start off with, we call our workers at Kraken Krakenites. I might say that from time to time, and I'm referring to our Kraken workers. That's what we call ourselves, and it's like
The team.
it's like a term of endearment. It's a positive term.
Yeah.
So the first quality of Kraken that we're going to look at is the fact that we are in the crypto industry. So people usually gravitate towards Kraken and wanting to work here because they care about crypto, and but in some cases that's not necessarily true. So you don't have to be passionate about crypto to work at the company, but for the majority of roles, you probably need to be interested in the industry on some level, and the more interested you are in it and the more you know about it, the more it's going to help you for most roles. And if you do care about the crypto industry, then it's important that you share its values, because as a company, and the majority of people at our company, we do align ourselves with crypto values like security, privacy, personal freedom, protecting civil liberties. If you haven't checked it out already, episode 5, we talk more in depth about the importance of crypto values and the importance of crypto companies protecting those values. So if you value those things, then you're going to feel like you have a lot in common with other people at the company. If you don't value those things necessarily, there are some roles where that's going to be okay and not a problem. If you are opposed to these values, then that would be an issue. So I think that would be a case where you would probably not want to work at Kraken, and you would probably feel out of place.
For sure. So for most people in the company, I would say that crypto is a lifestyle that once they discover crypto, they become totally immersed in it, and coming to work for Kraken is sort of just a way to bond their personal interest with their professional life. So it can be very addictive. Personally, when I found out about crypto, I just dove right in. I didn't do anything else but read about crypto for probably like the next several months. And that was back in 2011. And now there's just so much more content out there, so many more things happening. I can't even keep up with it all. But for me, I'm still completely immersed in it. It is both my work and my hobby. And I think a lot of people at the company are like that as well. And, like you said, if you're not buying into the crypto ethos, that may be okay for some roles. But yeah, if you're against it, if you feel like um, government needs to be involved in everything, or people should not be allowed to make their own choices, or people should not have personal privacy or free speech or things like that, this is definitely going to be a bad fit for you, because most of the people that are involved in crypto are really strong believers in those things, and people at this company as well.
Absolutely. So most people at the company at Kraken, they do see their job as furthering the mission of crypto, which is also Kraken's mission, is to make crypto mainstream so we can help the world. And so, because most people who work here see it as their life mission too, or a lifestyle for them, then what you see in meetings, or whether it's phone calls in person, or chat conversations, very rarely is a project being discussed or a work topic being discussed in a way that is going through the motions, or without passion, or without engagement, where people are just checking the boxes and doing the bare minimum. That is very, very rare, because everybody sees that any work task they do or any project they're involved in, they understand and they see how that plays a role in the bigger mission of the company.
Absolutely. So that's kind of a good segue into number two, which is work-life balance. And it's really hard to maintain work-life balance for a lot of people in the company, in part because they're so passionate about crypto and there's not a clear line between their personal interest and their work interests. So you'll find a lot of people, they'll just stay late and do research on something that they're just interested in, and it also benefits the company. But there are other challenges being a 24/7 global company and 24/7 global industry, and that's that it never sleeps. So there is always work to be done. There's always something new happening, and if you are not good at controlling yourself and making sure that you get time to sleep or time to eat or time to go to the gym, um, it can easily get away from you. Because there's no clear time to break away because it's just going constantly.
Crypto is 24/7, 365. The Kraken exchange operates 24/7, 365. The industry is evolving at such a pace and rate that we can't, it's humanly impossible almost for one person to just keep up with everything. And so, as a result, there's always something to do, and people see their work as also their passion. So, as a result, absolutely, uh, it's really great when you can have your work also be your passion, but in terms of what you need to be careful of, or what our Krakenites watch out for, is making sure that they're practicing good time management, that they are listening to their body, that they understand if they're pushing themselves too hard, or neglecting other areas of their life. And we really encourage Krakenites and managers to help each other identify this, so they don't burn out.
Yeah, that said, if people are just looking for a 9 to 5 job that they can clock in and clock out of, this is probably not the place. There may be a few roles where that is possible, but for the most part, people in this company are working very hard. They're working long hours. They are available to and happy to jump in and help. When we get underwater, and because the industry kind of operates in these cycles, these boom bust cycles. Right now we're in a bear market. Things are a little slow, but we came out of a really intense period where it was all hands on deck, everybody working 16-hour days for weeks. And that's going to happen again, and if you are not up for a challenge and for getting together with the team to overcome putting out some fires, then this is not for you because this industry is not stagnant. There's just no predicting what the next day is going to be like.
Exactly. If you're not passionate or interested in crypto, then it's going to be harder for you to work here, because you're not going to derive intrinsic pleasure from the work. If you do derive intrinsic pleasure, which most people do, then this is the reason why a lot of people work nights, weekends, holidays, and especially during the bull market, they do these things because it's fun to work. And so there's actually one time there was somebody who others suspected that this person was working really hard, and people were sharing with each other, "Oh yeah, I talked to him at X time," and someone else would say, "Oh, really? Because I was talking to him about work stuff at Y time." And people started sharing with each other when they were talking to this person at work. And as a result, the group kind of figured out, oh, we think that this Krakenite is only sleeping 4 hours a day because that's the only explanation for how they can be responsive and talking with everybody the other 20 hours of the day.
Yeah.
And so that can happen where people who are really passionate about what they're doing at Kraken, like you forget to eat sometimes, you forget to sleep sometimes, you forget to do laundry. And so we really encourage that people understand themselves and their own limitations, and when they need to, when they want to, they take paid time off. They ask their manager if it's okay. And then we ask managers to encourage people to go off the grid if possible. So as long as there isn't a work
Mhm.
emergency and there's somebody else who can do what you normally do, then we encourage you go off the grid, take a great vacation, turn
Mhm.
off all of your work devices, don't check email, don't check chat, and truly take a break away so that you can come back refreshed and come back with more creative solutions to problems and be inspired by other things that are not just crypto. If you are applying for a job at Kraken and in the process of interviewing, then I highly encourage you to ask your hiring manager what the work hours are expected of you, and to let your hiring manager know what personal or non work obligations or commitments you have, and what hours or what days you are not going to be able to be responsive and online. And I think that would
Mhm.
be the beginning of really good communication between you and the hiring manager, because there isn't a hiring manager who's going to say, you need to be online and available 24/7, 365. That would be unrealistic and unhealthy. But depending on the hiring manager and the role, they might absolutely say, like, in this case, if there's an emergency, can I call your cell phone? Are you comfortable with that?
Mhm.
Or with this role, it's going to be really helpful if you're awake at the same time that I'm awake. So
Mhm.
it's good to have that conversation. I highly encourage it if you are in the interview process now. And also, even if you are already a Krakenite, if it's been a while since you had that conversation with your manager, I encourage you to have a refresh of it.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about people taking time off and refreshing themselves when they have the opportunity to do it, because we never know when there's going to be another crazy breakout bull run, and we'll be flooded with requests and tons of fires to put out again. So could happen at any time. So we don't want to see people kind of redlining it day to day. We want them to keep a little in the tank for when we really need it.
Absolutely. The company wins and the individuals win if people are healthy and productive. So that's totally what we want. I should also, so just to recap for work life balance, if you're the type of person, and this is totally okay, but from our experience and what we've seen, if you're the type of person who you prefer that you're not passionate about your company, you prefer that you're not passionate about the industry because you want to be able to just clock in, clock out, 9 to 5, as soon as 5 p.m. hits, you want to be able to check out mentally. You have your own passions and hobbies that are not crypto, and you just want really a job that can help you pay your bills. What we have seen is that for most roles, Kraken does not really offer a good place for you if that describes you and what you're looking for in your life right now. So if you
Hmm.
are looking for a job where you can be passionate about it, then this is for you. And if you're comfortable with being so passionate that you kind of get lost in it, and as a result you're happy to sometimes work nights, weekends, and holidays, then this may be somewhere you really like. Number 3, Kraken is very diverse, and we try to be very open minded. We have 800 people all over the world distributed. The majority of people are working remotely. A small percentage of those 800 people are working from physical office locations. Since they're all distributed across the world, one of the benefits of that is that whenever there's a decision to be made or a project, those people that are involved, they end up representing a very wide variety of people and backgrounds. So we have many different cultures at Kraken: ethnicities, ages, gender, languages that are spoken, and also opinions and beliefs. So for any given decision or project, we already have a really diverse focus group that's already involved. And in this way, it helps to ensure that we're not forgetting a segment of our clients or a part of the world where we have clients, and that we are looking at everything from a holistic point of view.
Yeah, my favorite thing about having a really diverse team is just hearing what people are up to all over the world. We have so many different cultures represented. People are living in so many different countries. I think we have something like 60 different countries that people are in,
Mhm.
which is so cool. I really love traveling. I love meeting people from other countries and hearing about their experiences and how things are different. And especially in crypto, we're here in the United States and we have many options for payments. Currency is relatively stable,
Mhm.
but some people working at the company are not living like that, or they're maybe they were just in Venezuela last month, and they're living in Colombia or something. So we get to hear all these really great stories about how they're seeing crypto being used all over the world, and what are the problems that people are facing all over the world. So that's really interesting to me. I also love languages, and I think it's really great that we have so many people speaking so many different languages that we're able to support so many different people from all over the world as well because of that.
Absolutely. And because we value diversity and we've built a diverse team, last time I checked, we had 40% of the team was female, for example. We also have younger people. We also have people who are more mature and more experienced. And so we have people with young children. We have people with pets that want to talk about how much they love their pets. We have people who travel a lot and love talking about that with each other. And so everybody uh, comes from a diverse background and with diverse interests and in even lifestyles. But what the common denominator is for all of us is that we all share the same values. And so I think
Hmm.
that is a huge strength of Kraken, that we have the benefits of being diverse, but then we're all in sort of lockstep and we all kind of believe in the same mission and goal. And so that really brings us all together. We try as a company to be open and transparent when it comes to communication. And although we don't always need to agree on every decision that's made, we all understand that we are on the same team pursuing the same mission. We always look for common ground and we try to keep an open mind. Number four, if we had to guess if Kraken consists of more introverted people versus extroverted people, we would guess that it is more introverted people.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we don't have people from both groups as well as hybrid people who when they take tests or if they reflect and think about what gives them energy, it's sort of both and they're somewhere in between. What's great about this at Kraken is that people when they talk about things that matter. So most people at Kraken don't talk just to talk, or they don't interact just to interact. There's a purpose behind it, and it's because they want to talk about something meaningful. So in that sense, it's really great because it keeps things productive and it keeps conversation or interactions really focused and goal oriented. Since the majority of the team is remote and there's that low in person interaction, we do try to have work retreats when we can, which is really great because for our introverts as well as our hybrid Krakenites, what we hear is that they really enjoy the balance that they get at this company where they do get the moments that they want of interaction and socializing, but not to the point where it really depletes them and it really drains them and sucks all of the energy out of them. So the majority of the time they like to be able to have solitude, have silence and peace if they want it, and calmness, and focus on what they need to do But then when they want to, there are outlets, whether it's chat or calls or video calls or these retreats, there are outlets for them to get that socialization when they want it.
Yeah, absolutely. I see myself as more of an introvert, and I really appreciate that we've been able to build this remote company, and it's totally cool to work from home. And when I do work from home, I don't feel like I'm left out in any way. We started the company as a remote company because back in 2011, there just were not that many people willing to work at a crazy crypto startup. So we kind of had to take people wherever we could get them. And my last company was also completely remote, but that was only 50 people. So we already had some experience executing on this remote structure coming into starting Kraken, and it's worked out really well. The tools have only gotten better over time. I think having a few offices around the world is great for those people that really feel like they need a place to go to get away from home, or just to be around other people. And they can do that. They can move to one of those places, or if they happen to live there, they're welcome to go into the office. But everyone's welcome to work from home. So I think it's a great balance to have, and it's great to give people both options. I think it allows us to hire a lot of people that are excellent, that otherwise would not be able to take a job with us. If they had to come into the office.
We encourage anyone who is interested in working at Kraken to really think and reflect on this quality in particular, because having a primarily work from home team, there is upside and there is downside. So we've had people join before and they've said, yes, I'm going to wear pajamas every day and I'm going to drink wine in the afternoon. Like, this is fantastic. I've never worked from home before, but I'm going to love it. And a few months in, they let us know, I'm feeling kind of depressed. I'm kind of lonely. Like, it was
Hmm.
cool for a month, and then I got kind of sad, and I don't have that distinction anymore between like my work desk and like my home sofa. And so some people have said it's not, like, oh gosh, I didn't realize it until I tried it, but it is not for me. I
Hmm.
need to be in an office. I need to be looking at people in their face. I need to be, giving people hugs every day. And so it's good though that people are able to identify that, and maybe you'll be able to identify that without even having to experience it if you think about it. And then on the flip side, the upside, we've had people who have said, I've never worked from home before, and then they try it and they work here, and then they say, oh my goodness, I get to spend more time with my child or my children than I've ever had before. Like, my family life is better for it. My child is happier for it. I know my child better because of it. Or people have said, I get so much more work done. Like, I get to, because I get to work at home, I get so much more work done, or I
Right.
really like it. And then also, if if you haven't tried it before, if you haven't tried working from home before, and you do decide that you think that you will like it and you work at Kraken, there are almost 800 people who are more than happy to embrace you and give you tips and tricks and lessons that they learned along the way, like the importance of creating a workspace somewhere within your home so that you have that
Hmm.
physical location you can go to help with that work life balance. We even have a chat channel called Battle Stations, where everybody who works remotely, they post pictures of their workstation that they've built, and they share tips on how to maintain work-life balance when you're working at home, or how to be most productive. And yeah, so that's a really big part of our culture, and it's something that is a strength for us. The fact that we are we tend to be introverted, and the fact that we're okay with having solitude and working remotely, we're able to hire the very best of the best. We don't need to limit ourselves to office locations. And also, just because you're not super outgoing and charismatic, that doesn't mean that you don't have really great ideas and you can't accomplish a lot and solve a lot of problems. So the last note on number 4, Kraken being more introverted than extroverted. If you are the type of person who you need all of that regular daily in-person communication, then definitely consider that this may not be the best place for you, but also be open-minded that there may be benefits to it that will be meaningful to you.
Yeah, I mean, well, we have several offices around the world, so people are always welcome to work from the office if they happen to live nearby. I wouldn't force anyone to work remotely if they really were committed to working in an office. Um, but yeah, I mean, some of the benefits, like you said, the more family time. I mean, I've
Hmm.
heard people in the company say that they used to commute 3 hours a day because the area where they live, the traffic is just so bad, and now they get 3 hours back every day. Which they can use to go to the gym or spend with their family or cook instead of going to fast food or whatever. Like just getting that time back is so amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many benefits of working from home, but yeah, it really takes the right personality to do it well.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. Number 5, everybody at Kraken has to work hard. We're trying to push crypto mainstream. So we have a very, very ambitious goal as a company. And we also have limited resources just because we don't have unlimited amount of money to be spending on hiring people. And we also don't want to have more people than we need in terms of process and efficiency. And so as a result, we need every single person to deliver max value. There's a
Mhm.
lot to do. So we expect a lot from every single individual, no matter what your role is. So if you're at a point in your career or your personal life where you're tired, you're burnt out from your last job, you're at a point where you just want to have fun. You just want a fun job and you don't really want to have to work that hard and you want a good time. Or maybe you want to relax and you're overdue for relaxing and deserve to relax after a long, impressive career. If any of those things describe you, then you're probably going to find it frustrating to work at Kraken because everyone at Kraken is expected to work really hard.
Right. And I think that if you were not willing to work hard, you would probably start to feel like you were letting down your team or you were letting other people down, and it just wouldn't be a good fit. You would be uncomfortable, I think, being the only person among your team of whatever, 20 people who is not able to just put in that extra hour to meet the deadline. We're still a startup. Things are changing all the time. We're still growing very quickly.
What do you mean when you say we're still a startup? How do you expand upon that?
I mean, the company is still young. We're 7.5 years old. And, really probably, we have close to 800 people now. Um, Probably 600 of those people were hired in the last 2 years. And so, we've grown really quickly. We're still growing really quickly. And um, there is just so much work to be done. We are not anywhere close to hitting kind of a plateau where it seems like we can kind of like back off for a bit and put things on autopilot. We really need people that come on to really dig in. And the people that are here already, you will regularly see me come up with an idea for something and say, "Hey, does anybody know anything about this? Cool, you know something about it? Can you take this project? Can you lead this? Can you go do more research?" I'm always doling out kind of more responsibilities to people who are willing to step up and take it. And I think we see that across the company. There's just the industry is just moving so quickly. It's really important that people coming in really are ready to get to work, and don't see it as kind of a cush job to ride until they retire in a few years.
Right. Everyone is expected to prove themselves at Kraken. So, your background and your qualifications and previous accomplishments, that is absolutely very important in you getting a job at Kraken and us knowing or expecting that you can fulfill a role. But once you're hired, your background only matters if it's something that you can leverage in you working hard and contributing to Kraken and generating value for Kraken. So once everybody comes into the Kraken door, it's sort of like, okay, we're all equal again. Like who can get how much done. And so every person, as soon as you're hired, kind of your background, your past achievements kind of go out the window a little bit, in the sense that it's like, okay, that's nice, but what can you do for Kraken? What can you do today? What can you do tomorrow? There have been cases where we've had less experienced, younger Krakenites, maybe fresh out of college or early in their career, and perhaps they want the Kraken job to be about developing them. And because Kraken is a hyper growth company in a hyper growth industry, nobody can afford to set work aside and then just teach somebody something. Like, maybe in small doses people can afford to do that, but not in any extreme way, because everybody has so much on their plate. So we really need everybody to be a doer.
Yeah, and to not have an attitude about anything. Like if if you get something to do, if you identify something that can be improved, we expect people just to take it and run with it and do as much as they can, and carry the ball as far as they can, and not have the attitude like, well, that's not what I was hired to do, or that's not my department, so I'm just gonna like ignore that.
Yeah, this is a really good point. So because we're hyper growth, which this goes into our number 6, Kraken is hyper growth. We have evolving needs. So because the industry evolves every day, and Kraken is evolving every day, from growing the team and adding new processes, and every day we're making new business decisions. Because of that, people's roles shift. Krakenites' roles shift regularly, and projects come up, or tasks come up, or people need help with something. And it's okay, well, who has time to help, and who is able to, and who has, domain knowledge in this area. And so if anyone has the mindset of, whoa, wait, like when I was hired, I was never told I was going to be asked to help with XYZ, then I would say that's the type of mindset that is good for a company that's not in hyper growth
Hmm.
phase.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you will see me loading the dishwasher at the office. I'm not above doing any job, and neither should anybody else. I think some people, if they're coming from a very structured organization, I think there might be some adjustment in getting used to all of the developing process. We went from 200 to 800 in the course of 2 years, and there's just a lot of stuff that an 800 person company, you would think if they've been around for 20 years, would have. But being as young as we are, and having grown as quickly as we have, it's just not there. So you might say like, someone this just came up recently. Um, what is the company's policy on maternity leave? Like, oh, no one has ever asked about that, 7.5 years in. Okay, now we have to figure that out. And there's all kinds of little things like that just come up all the time. And the people working here need to be comfortable with that there is not a procedure for everything. Sometimes you just gotta like put your thinking hat on and figure out what would be the best process. And often I will ask people, what do you think it should be? You came up with the question, so when people come to me with a question, I always want them to have an answer. At
A
least,
suggestion.
yeah, at least one suggestion, ideally two, and a recommendation, to save me from doing all the thinking. Right? Like they ought to do some of the thinking, and that's a way that we're able to move more quickly. Is that I'm not going to be a bottleneck for every decision that needs to be made, or for doing research and thinking about every problem. That's something that everyone in the company can take on, is whenever they have a question or a problem that comes up, they can try to think through the problem before they go to their manager, and present their solution, or get an answer.
And I should say, in regards to the maternity leave, we've always done what is legally required with maternity leave, but actually just recently, because somebody asked the question, because they were having a baby,
I think it was
we
actually paternity leave
yeah,
in this case.
because the question was brought up, then that was the catalyst for, oh, yeah, that's a really good question. We want to have a really good policy on this and a good program for this. So let's have a group of people figure out beyond what is the minimum legal requirement for maternity leave or paternity leave, like what's a little something extra we can do. And so, yeah, that's something that's just been finalized and we're going to be rolling out. That's a great example. I think if you're the type of person who, when you start a company, you want to be handed a rule book and it's 1,000 pages and you can always scroll through it and find out exactly how to do XYZ and who to go to for what, then a hyper growth company is probably not the best place for you. Whereas if you are somebody who you kind of like a work environment where it's exciting, where things are always happening, things are always changing, where there's always opportunity, where you're encouraged to jump in and offer suggestions and recommendations,
Mhm.
and think outside the box and build and create, then I think you would really like it at Kraken.
Yeah. By the way, paternity slash maternity leave works really well with remote work. Some people have taken a few months off right after having a child and then did another few months remote before coming back to the office.
Very good point. So, with Kraken being hyper growth, it is really exciting, and there are no 2 days that are the same. But also, there are the areas of the company naturally with any hyper growth company where there are areas that are underdeveloped to varying degrees, and we're in the process of developing them and implementing processes. So, this is one reason why number 7, Kraken expects people to give the company and the leadership team the benefit of the doubt. Kraken is a hypergrowth company, and that means no 2 days are exactly the same, which most people find really exciting. But because that's always happening, where there's always change and things are always evolving, that means that there's many areas of the business that you may not have full insight into. There might be changes happening and you're not involved in the change. You didn't make the decision to make it change. You don't know exactly what was the context for why the change needed to be made or how it was decided. And so it's really important at Kraken. We really love that for the most part, our people trust the company to make good decisions and trust the leadership team to do things that are good for them and good for the company and the industry. So if you are the type of person who you feel like you are able to give your company the benefit of the doubt and your leaders the benefit of the doubt, then I think that you would like it at Kraken. Whereas if you are the type of person who you kind of don't trust companies, even the company that you work at, and you jump to conclusions and you're quick to judge or you're quick to blame others or you're quick to be skeptical and to think the worst in somebody or in a company, then you're probably not going to really like working here because there's a lot of changes that are made or decisions made, and we don't always have the ability to explain every little thing to everybody. And the three main reasons why we can't do that is number one, for security reasons. That's one example. Number two, productivity. We would it would be very hard for us to get stuff done if everyone at the company, all almost 800 people, needed to be aware of why every decision was being made. So there's just kind of a need to know basis sometimes just for productivity reasons. And then the third reason is when it comes to people stuff or staffing, if there's an unfortunate decision needs to be made for somebody to be terminated or let go, or for multiple people to be laid off, let's say, just as an example, then there may be reasons of delicacy. It may be a fragile situation, and we may need to respect people's privacy, and we may not want to go into detail as to the exact nitty gritty of why something has happened or
Mhm.
why a decision was made. So it's really great if we are the type of company who can trust ourselves and each other and management. So if you're the type of person who you're good at being understanding, you try to see the good in others, you try to focus on what's in your control, and if you're comfortable with being open with your manager and letting your manager know if you have a problem with something or if you're feeling a certain way, if that sounds like it's you, then I highly recommend that you interview for Kraken and join the team, because then I think you're gonna really like it here.
Yeah, I've been running companies for a long time in my life, but before that, I had some crazy ideas about what happened kind of at the top level of companies that were just completely disconnected from reality, as it turns out. You would see things at work and just think like, it's so dumb that this is done this way. I can't believe management. This makes zero sense, But then, fast forward like 20 years and like thinking back, yeah, that was just probably like the last thing on their list of like 10,000 things to worry about. And maybe it didn't make any sense, but nobody had time to deal with it. Or maybe it did make sense and you just didn't understand that, it doesn't make sense for you. It seems irrational, but they've got to manage 10,000 people and they need a policy that is like going to work and that there aren't exceptions being asked for constantly or whatever, So just things get different at scale, But that said, anybody is welcome to state their opinion about anything in chat, and I read chat like all day long, and it's very easy to get your opinion heard in the company. So I think that's one good thing about our company, and one great thing about being remote and just having a chat room for the whole company is that you don't need to corner me, at the water cooler to have me see what you have to say.
For the record, do you like or don't like being cornered?
I definitely don't like being cornered, and it's sometimes why I don't, if I have a lot to get done, at our office in San Francisco, I don't have a private office, and so if I have a lot to get done, I might just stay at home and make sure I get it done so that I don't get accosted at the water cooler, like 20 times in a day. Yeah, so just giving your leaders the benefit of the doubt, I think, is really just like a lesson for everybody to learn. I learned it myself, and you just don't always know. You can't comprehend or even imagine the things that are going on at the highest level, like the kinds of trade-offs and decisions that need to be made. And you know, I look at like the criticism that comes to the president of the United States, and I just think I can't imagine what kind of issues this guy is having to juggle. Any president, and not just our current president, but any president, like, it might seem like he made some bad economic decision, but maybe that was the requirement to not going to war with some country, and the people will never know because all that happens behind the scenes, and they only have to judge you on is what's publicly available. So, obviously some things are egregious and they should be called out, but um, I think for the most part, you got to trust that your leaders are doing their best and are making the right decisions.
And you're the first to admit you're not perfect. So you're not trying to claim perfection. You're not trying to claim that you don't make mistakes or that, you always make the right decision, or that you don't try to claim that if you could go back in time, you wouldn't change anything. So I think the point is not that if you're the type of person where you want your company to be perfect, then, well, I think it might be hard for you to be happy, but definitely Kraken does not claim to be perfect. That would be impossible. And we also don't try to be perfect. We try to do what we think is the right thing given the circumstances.
Right.
And yes, the many, many trade-offs. Like the more high level the decision, the more, especially when it comes to things like security or people stuff, and especially considering this industry, there are so few decisions where there is a clear answer of okay, this is the right thing to do.
Hmm.
It's usually you really have to be thoughtful about it, and then you have to choose a path and you have to go down it, and every path is going to make people sad or mad, And
Right.
it's about, okay, well, which path is going to make the least people sad or mad? Or in some cases, it's not about making people happy. And it's about, okay, well, what's true to our values?
Right.
Or what's true to our mission? Or what's good for our clients? And so it's always a compromise or trade offs. And or you have to sacrifice something. And so if you are the type of person where you need to or want to agree with every decision that's made at that company, then yes, probably not Kraken, and maybe not a company that's larger than 5 or 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Number 8, Kraken's personality. Kraken is passionate yet informal. So we are passionate in the sense that Kraken is changing the world, but and what's more passionate than that? Trying to change the world. That's very ambitious and aspirational. At the same time, I think a lot because of Jesse, we're very informal. We're very humble, casual in sort of our day-to-day demeanor. We speak simply. So we don't try to internally, we don't try to speak in a formal manner. We don't try to use the biggest words possible. We're not super professional or formal with each other. We really sort of speak as simply and concisely and kind of casually to the point as possible and like human. We try to keep communication human. And then we also have minimal drama and we really try to be low maintenance as people. The types of personalities that in the past have really stood out like a sore thumb and didn't fit in, and this resulted in the person probably feeling like they don't really fit in and as if they're kind of causing problems. People who have fit this in the past are people who are very ego driven, where it's sort of they make decisions based on what's going to make them look good or what's going to make them feel good. They're selfish in that maybe they put too much so, where they too much so put themselves before others, put themselves before the company, put themselves before what's right and what's wrong. People who are greedy and instead of wanting and they can't be trusted to make decisions because instead of wanting to follow our values of doing right by our clients and doing right by our Krakenites, they're more in it for themselves. And so if they're given any responsibility or decision making authority, then they're going to choose things that benefit them at the cost of others. People who are arrogant or cocky. So Jesse is very humble and a very modest person. And as a result, we've hired people that way. And so when somebody is the opposite of that and they think highly of themselves, more highly than they should, then that becomes a problem because at our company, we believe that your work should speak for you and your results should speak for you.
Yeah.
People who have been manipulative in any way or political, or people who have created drama or conflict or they've gossiped about things, or just people who are in all of these things, anybody I just described, that would classify for us as being high maintenance. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you're if you feel as if people have said that you possess these qualities at all, or if you want to be honest with yourself and be like, I'm kind of like those things, or even one of those things, then you're probably going to be better off at a different type of company where maybe there's more people like you there. Because in some companies, it might be really, in some companies, they might love it. There are some companies they want you to be arrogant. They want you to be overly confident. They want you to be the loudest voice in the room. And maybe they feel like that's what gets stuff done. But at Kraken, we do not believe that. We don't believe that the loudest voice in the room should be heard. We
Mm-hmm.
believe the smartest voice, in the room, the most like thoughtful voice in the room should be heard. And
Right.
so personality is very key for us. Kraken itself has a very particular personality, this passionate yet humble and informal. And so the people who love it here the most and the people who end up really becoming rock stars at Kraken are the ones with the personality that is more like Kraken and, I think more like Jesse.
Yeah, Kraken is very much a meritocracy, but also included in that, it's not just the person's skills at their job. It's also how much of a culture fit they are. I'm super loyal to the people that have stuck with us through the tough times and who have proven themselves over the years. Yeah, the company's super informal because prior to this company, like I said, my last company was 50 people, all remote. Did that for about 10 years, and I was just working in pajamas for 10 years. I wasn't about to go get in a suit and do the crypto thing. It just wasn't my style. Yeah, I like to keep it laid back. I think I'm not trying to replicate the banking industry or any of the traditional financial services firms. I think it's okay to be different. Of course, when I need to put a suit on, I can do that, and I know that it matters in some cases. But to the extent possible, I try to be genuine. I try to fight for what's right. Somebody has to call this stuff out. I mean, the way that things get worse, I mean, you look back in history, everything starts with something small. Like the worst events all start with something small, and then nobody says anything and they kind of allow it, and it's this foot in the door thing. Like people start to do it and they test their boundaries, and then they see they get away with it, and then they go a little further, and then they go a little further. Somebody has to be the person to say something, and I'm not going to be the one if everything blows up, the person who didn't say anything and just said, well, I hope somebody else says something because like this is looking like it's going to get pretty bad. That's not going to be me. I'll go down fighting. And ultimately the mission is to get crypto to the people of the world. We will make some concessions to do that, but there's some things we are not going to concede on, and it's why we're not operating everywhere in the world. There's just some things, some rules we are not willing to play by. I hope that this kind of philosophy permeates throughout the company. We're not just a profit driven company. We really care about making a difference. It really is about the mission, and profits are nice, but that really is secondary. I wouldn't sell everyone's data just to up the share price by 10% or something like that.
Yeah, I think you are true to who you are, and Kraken is true to what it is. And so, if you're the type of person who you feel like that describes you too, then you're going to feel like you have a lot in common with Kraken. Kraken does not prioritize what others think of it or what others want it to do or what's the easy thing to do or what's like the safe thing to do. So like the whole you reminded me of the bystander effect. Like there's
Hmm.
everybody agrees that there's problems with this world, but most people want to stand on the sidelines and just sort of hope, I hope somebody else takes care of that so it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be me. Well, guess what? Like
Yeah.
you are the one to do it. It
Right.
should be you because everyone is thinking like you.
Right. I mean,
So like it takes bravery and courage. And it takes a lot of strategic thinking and thoughtfulness too, because sometimes I think that because you're outspoken and because you tend to be true to who you are or you try to be, I think sometimes some people who are very much in that mode of thinking of bystander effect, they think, whoa, like, does he know the implications of what he's doing? I don't think they realize that you've actually really thought it through. You understand that the bystander effect is the reason why there's so many problems.
absolutely. And we know that, a cure for the bystander effect is just for one person to say something, right? And that will encourage many more people to take a stance. It just takes that one person. And I don't ever want to be in a position where I could have been that one person easily. And I said nothing, or no one else said anything. And so nothing happened, or things got really bad. I've kind of lived that way ever since I learned about this phenomenon in psychology class in college. I've always thought, in any scenario, I think something bad is happening. I'm gonna have to be the one to do something about it because I can guess like 99% chance no one else is gonna do anything. But if I do something, I can get some people to join me and help me. I just do that like walking around in everyday life. I just expect no one else is going to do anything about this. So I better do something. Uh, Usually I'm right, unfortunately. But sometimes you're surprised. Sometimes someone else gets there first, and that's great. And you can be a strong supporter of them.
Yeah. Okay. So we try to, if we've explained anything, I hope it's that at Kraken, we try to handle things and approach things in a way that to us just sort of makes sense and it's just sort of like simple and intuitive. And in that same line of thinking, we developed years ago a compensation philosophy for how we pay Krakenites. And it has we've improved it, evolved it, enhanced it as we've grown. But this is something we've done for years. So to recap, though, the problem with how most companies handle compensation nowadays and how they've done it, people underestimate or overestimate their value in general. It's shown in research that women, for example, tend to not think that they're deserving of a raise or a promotion and not likely to ask for it and think that they need to continue to prove themselves and just wait for something to happen. Whereas men are more likely to want to ask or be bold and aggressive about it. And so that's one example. Also, when it comes to introversion, extroversion, introverts are less likely to want to confront a topic or address this themselves and initiate the conversation. And so that creates an imbalance where extroverts, just because they're comfortable with talking, they're comfortable with bringing up topics, they're comfortable with maybe negotiating or framing arguments, then there's a disadvantage there, and so that's another example. But there's other examples with minority groups and things like that, but or when it comes to just personality, where people underestimate or overestimate their value. And so people are not good they're not accurate predictors of what their value is going to be for a specific company. Also, pay history is overvalued. There are companies who they either still ask, "Oh, how much do you get paid right now?" or "How much do you want?" Or companies who ask, "What is your pay history? And tell me what you've been paid." And those companies are also the ones typically who their number one goal and really only goal is to save money. And so they want to know what your pay history is so that they can say, "Oh, okay, I'll match what you're making now." And it can be the minimum possible. Or, "Okay, I'll give you X amount more than you're making now," just because
Hmm.
they just want to know the least that they can pay you. And they don't care whether your current pay is fair or not to you. They just want to get you for as cheaply as possible. When actually pay history is kind of arbitrary, right? So if you were a woman, if you're a minority, if you were introverted, if you didn't brag about yourself during the interview process, if you don't have a good resume, whatever the reason is, right? Whether
Hmm.
maybe your background is good, but you didn't spend tons of time writing kind of sales pitch resume. So, and maybe for one of these arbitrary reasons that doesn't have anything to do with your work ethic or your contribution or skills or knowledge, maybe you've been underpaid, or maybe you worked at a company where they didn't have a big budget for pay, or maybe you worked at a company where they had an inflated budget for pay. And so, pay history is a lot of emphasis is put on it when actually there shouldn't be. And I
Hmm.
think that if you do that, then you are handcuffing people to their past pay. And if every company they work at does that, then they're never going to be able to free themselves from their first pay, that they got at their very first job. When it comes to how things are typically done at companies with compensation, there are high maintenance costs. So when people are hired for as cheaply as possible or just based on what they are currently getting paid, then there's a lot of disparity in salaries. And as a result, when they look at all of the comp data, it seems kind of arbitrary all over the place. And then as a result, it's hard to then evolve that person's compensation while they're at the company, because the problem is there isn't a philosophy. And if there isn't a philosophy, then it's hard to maintain. Another issue is the cost of living, maintenance, whether it's fair or not, and then if you are going to maintain it, if there needs to be a big brother component added in. So because we have a primarily remote team, we considered early on, well, okay, well, what if we factor in cost of living to every person's salary? And then we realized very quickly that because we have people scattered all over the world and very few hubs, then that would mean a lot of research into the exact cost of living of this exact city. And also, then you get into discussions and arguments or negotiations where it's like, oh, the data I found said that this city cost of living is X. And then the person who lives there is like, oh, that's inaccurate. Like, it's actually much more expensive to live here. And so then you have to
Mm-hmm.
negotiate that. And then the fairness issue is, okay, well, just because you hired somebody who lives somewhere that is expensive, why did they get to get paid more versus somebody who happens to be living somewhere with low cost of living and you just happen to hire them when they lived there? Like, it seems sort of
Right.
arbitrary.
Yeah, unless they're coming into your office there. If they're working remote, if they're both working remote, then it shouldn't matter, right? I mean, you should just judge them based on their qualifications and their particular expected contribution to the company, and it shouldn't have to do with where they live. And if the guy who's living in Hong Kong, saying, "I'm paying $5,000 a month for my apartment," and we say, "Well, we don't have an office in Hong Kong. It doesn't matter to us if you're living in Hong Kong or if you're living in Thailand. Why don't you go live in Thailand, and save yourself $4,000 a month?" We can offer the same salary, and he can choose then, like, where does he want to live? Does he want to keep living in Hong Kong, and is it worth it, or does he want to go save the money and live in Thailand?
Right, absolutely. We see, and I think that more companies should see it, that it's really unfair for you to make salaries highly dependent on cost of living or location, because maybe that person, maybe I think everybody should have the option of and flexibility and autonomy to, if unless it impacts their role and their ability to do their job, I think that companies should encourage people to be able to live where they want to live. And if you are giving somebody a really low, if you're giving everyone at your company like as low pay as you possibly can based on their cost of living, then you're creating a situation where all of those people will never have the opportunity to be able to afford a higher cost of living area or city.
Mhm.
And then for us, because we have primarily remote team, we realized that if we were going to look at the cost of living details for everybody, that Kraken would have to become sort of a like big brother sort of entity, and we would have to approve anytime somebody wanted to move
Mhm.
and where they were moving to and how that would adjust their cost of living and then how that would impact their pay and
Mhm.
if the company wanted to approve this or not. That seemed to be a little too controlling and invasive
Mhm.
than how we like to treat our Krakenites. And so for all those reasons, we think that how cost of living is typically addressed nowadays is wrong, or not ideal. Also, how things are typically done, because they're done in such a way that is a poor philosophy or no philosophy, then when these disparities surface or when these aspects of being unfair, are realized by workers, then there is a decrease in morale. When people find out, they become friends with each other and like, oh, how much are you getting paid? Oh, really? Wow. Like, I'm getting paid much less than you, but we have the exact same job title and we live in the same place and we
Mhm.
have the exact same work responsibilities every day.
Mhm.
Oh, it's because you just happen to be making more at your last job than me, but we're working at the same company and the same job title now. So when
Mhm.
things like that happen, then it's a morale killer.
Yeah.
And now both people involved don't trust the company, right? Only one person involved is probably really unhappy about it, but neither trusts the company at that point. And they
Mhm.
see, oh, okay, the company treats us like human capital. Like, if they
Mhm.
can if they can if they can cheat us, then they're going to do it in order to save a dime. And so I think that's really dangerous. And then finally, something that companies do is when they extend their compensation offer, they build in a buffer where they say, okay, I'm going to offer this person, $80,000 a year, but I would actually be okay with offering them $90,000 a year, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of a buffer, give myself wiggle room in case they push back. And then I'll say, oh, wow, you're really twisting my arm. Oh gosh, okay. Well, I guess I'll go up to $90,000.
Mm-hmm.
And this to me is very underhanded. It's very manipulative to build in a buffer, I think, and isn't treating people, I think, with respect and dignity and transparency. And so at Kraken, we go into any type of conversations with being like all cards on the table, transparent. We strip away any mind games or mental manipulation, and we go into it letting people know we don't really negotiate. Like, we
Yeah.
avoid negotiating because negotiating is actually unfair for the person. Like, it's unfair for the person, the candidate, and it's unfair for the Krakenites. And
Right.
so those are all the problems with how most companies address compensation philosophy. How we do it is we just sort of took a step back years ago and we said, what makes sense? Like, okay, we know everything that's wrong with this current system, but what would make sense? Take out all the mind games. Let's treat people with respect and transparency. And let's keep in mind that we want our people make our company. We want our people to be happy and fulfilled and to feel like this company cares about them. So let's make sure to start that dynamic even before they're hired. And so, okay, looking at it that way, what should we do? So when it comes to, if we split up compensation, split it into two pieces, the options piece, which is like the equity in Kraken, versus the cash or the annual salary, or if you're getting paid hourly or like that, then first let's look at options. So for the most part, we want everyone or most people at the company to have options. And this is because since we expect everybody to work really hard at Kraken, if you're going to work hard, you're going to grow the value of Kraken. And if you're going to do that, Kraken wants you to benefit from it. Like, if you're going to work hard to the point where you increase the value of this company, you're going to make that big of an impact, then we want you to benefit from that. And
Mhm.
so if you are applying for Kraken and you end up getting, woohoo, a job offer and it contains options, please know that the company and the Krakenites do not take that invitation of offers lightly. Like, I think some people don't really value options, and maybe a lot of it is because they don't understand it. And so we are working on better explaining to people and educating people on how to value these options and why they're valuable, or how valuable they are. But definitely, if you're applying at Kraken and you are extended an offer of options, know that those options are worth a lot to this company, and that anytime we give out options, that means that anyone else who is currently holding options or equity in the company, they're being diluted. So if the value of Kraken is like one pie, and we keep adding people to the pie, each person has less of that pie.
Mhm.
So if you get options, please see that is the company diluting itself and diluting its current Krakenites and its current investors, because we believe that people make our company, and that includes you, and we want you to have a stake in the company.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's rare to have such a large ownership of a company among the employees. We've got about 30% of the company is owned by the non-founder employees, which I think is awesome. I want everybody to have some skin in the game and to feel like, we're all on the same team. And if the company goes up 10x in value, that they're going to benefit from that too. It's not just the investors or the founders getting rich. I want everybody to participate in the upside. They worked hard. We couldn't do it without the team, obviously. And so, and in this industry, loyalty means a lot. I think longevity means a lot. There are so many opportunities in the space now. If people have some knowledge, many places that people could work, especially the people that have had some time at Kraken. We want to keep these people loyal to us. This also goes to the cash compensation. We try to stay ahead of expectations, really, and keep people well compensated in all roles. Even in let's say a customer support role. Um, we have kind of a long path that people can follow, and where this can be a career position. It doesn't just have to be something you do while you're in college, but you can make a pretty great living if you've been at Kraken, for 5+ years as a customer support person. You could be doing pretty well in terms of cash. And well, if you came in 5 years ago, you probably got a pretty good chunk of equity as well. We try to give everybody a little skin in the game and to give everybody a little bit of ownership and feel like it actually matters. If we together 10x the value of the company, that investment that they have in the company in the form of stock options is also going to 10x.
When it comes to the cash or salary component of compensation, we look internal, not external. So mainly these are the three things that really influence how much salary we're going to offer somebody. Number one, what is the role that we need at Kraken? And what are the qualifications that we're going to require? And the qualifications are both qualitative as well as quantitative. So they're straightforward, like X years of experience and these skills. But then there's also a qualitative component where the hiring manager is looking at each CV or resume case by case, and they're like, okay, it's got X years, that's great, Y skills. Now let me try to assess what is the quality of the overall experience, because maybe somebody who's worked only 10 years, but depending on the companies they've worked and the responsibilities they've had, then that person actually for Kraken is going to probably contribute more value than somebody in applying for the same role who has 20 years of experience, but the places they've worked and the types of responsibilities they've had, the quality of their work is not as valuable to Kraken. So that's kind of a nuanced thing with the qualifications. So number one, what is the role we need and what are the qualifications we need? Number two, what is this role and qualifications worth to Kraken, like to us? And so we as a company, we're very unique. Every company is unique, but we just because a developer at Google is worth X, that doesn't mean that a developer at Kraken is worth X. We are a different type of company. We may value developers more than Google values developers, just as an example. And so maybe we're more particular. And so when we do find a developer that we really like, then that developer's worth more to us than than it would be at Google. So this is number two, is what is this role worth specifically to Kraken, knowing that we are a unique company with unique needs and considerations. Number three, what is this role worth relative to other existing roles at the company? And this is the internal benchmarking that we do. So whenever we're going to hire a new role, we ask ourselves, okay, what are some existing roles we have now, whether they're the same job title or within the same function or not even in the same function? How how does how do we value the role that we currently have? And then how is that role different from this new role that we're creating? And we ask ourselves, okay, well, this new role, that's going to contribute more value to the company. It's going to contribute like roughly this much more value to the company. And based on our needs and the internal benchmarking, we have very easily, like we have a good idea of what we would pay this role.
Mhm.
And so looking at these three things, we have a good idea of what we want to pay this role already just with that alone. Then we add on top of that consideration. So we run it through other filters, like we look at and consider what is the market data for this role that's out there, but we also know that market data is like highly inaccurate in cases, and we would know to never heavily rely on market data. So it's just a consideration. It's just something that we do to make sure that we're considering everything. And then number two consideration, we prefer to not know your pay history. So at Kraken, no one should ever ask you what you're currently getting paid or what you've gotten paid in the past or what you want to get paid. There are very few exceptions where we ask somebody what do they want to get paid. And when we do, it's very rare and it's very intentional. But for the most part, no one should be asking you how much you want to get paid, what you were paid, or what you expect to get paid. And the reason why is because we explained earlier that this is very arbitrary. This can be very arbitrary. Just because other companies have valued you greatly in the past or because they've undervalued you, that doesn't mean that we're going to blindly just continue that trend. Because we're our own company with our own needs. And so you may have been undervalued your whole life, or maybe you've been overvalued in your previous role compared to how Kraken values you. Another thing we look at is cost of living. The exception to what I'm going to describe for our philosophy on this are our developers. Our developers all get paid Silicon Valley rates no matter where they live. They can live anywhere in the world, assuming that it's a place where we feel they're secure and safe. So there are parts of the world where we don't hire developers because it would not be safe to do so. But in any other part of the world where it is safe to do so, you will get paid Silicon Valley rates. And the reason why we do this is because for us, we greatly value our developers and we're very particular about what we're looking for in terms of being security minded and in terms of talent as well as culture fit. And so, because we are so particular and because we want to grow our development team to be so big, then we do pay them all Silicon Valley rates because we think that talented devs are everywhere and you shouldn't have to move to Silicon Valley in order to be fully acknowledged and valued.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the entrepreneur's mandate, I would say, is not just to reallocate financial capital in a way that's going to outperform other alternatives, but also to identify misallocations of human capital and to reallocate that human capital to more productive or more profitable endeavors. We want the best of the best at Kraken. We're dealing in a high stakes business. There are also very few people out there today who know crypto, who are security minded, who are culture fit. Like you said, we want to keep our standards high. We want to keep the bar high. And so we want to be able to take people wherever they are. And they're great people all over the world. And they're also great people right here in the United States who want to be able to travel. Just being able to pay people a competitive rate for the Silicon Valley, I think gives us a huge edge over who their potential local employers might be, all over the US and all over the world. Silicon Valley is probably the highest paid market for software engineers in the world. And to be able to get paid like that, but live somewhere with a much lower cost of living, I think is awesome. There are a lot of people out there who are totally brilliant and who are maybe stuck or feel stuck in their local market. Maybe they're capped making 50% of what they could make in Silicon Valley, but because of visa issues or companies relying on their past pay to make them an offer, they may feel kind of trapped. But I hope they apply for a job at Kraken because we would pay them Silicon Valley market rate.
So, setting the developers aside, because they're an exception to this, since they all get paid Silicon Valley rates, any other function or role, we figure out the cost of living based on putting each person into one of three buckets. So, first off, to start with bucket three, there is, for bucket three, we consider this, there are specific places in the world, for security reasons, I won't say where, but there are specific geographical locations in the world where we have we restrict ourselves for hiring for certain roles, and one of the main reasons for choosing that area is for low cost of living. There's other criteria for choosing those places, like security and things like that, and English fluency. But those specific places where we restrict ourselves because cost of living is very important for those roles, low cost of living, that's bucket 3. That's sort of figured out on its own and handled on its own. And then moving up, there's bucket 2, and these are cities, pretty much the majority of this other cities in the world, almost all other cities in the world, are bucket 2. Whether you live in, I'm just making this up, Austin, Texas, or you live in, give me another city.
Las Vegas,
Yeah, or Las Vegas, or what's another city like in another country?
Auckland, New Zealand.
Okay, yes, Auckland, New Zealand. So no matter where you live in any of those 3 places, if let's say that we hired 3 new people, each person living in one of those cities, and they all have the same job title, they'd all get the same pay.
Hmm.
We wouldn't look at, okay, what are like the nuances of cost of living between these 3 cities, because they're all in bucket 2. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, what cities are in bucket 1? How does bucket 1 work? So almost all cities in the world are bucket 2. There's only a few select, really intentionally picked cities that are considered bucket 1 cities. These are cities where cost of living is very high, but the company has a need for you to be in that specific city. Like the company has a need for you being there.
Hmm.
And as a result, if you're in a bucket 1 city, then when you're hired, you get a 20% markup in salary from bucket 2, what you would get paid if you lived in a bucket 2 city. And then you're told, if you ever want to move out of that bucket 1 city, and you want to move to any other city in the world, it could be a bucket 2 or a bucket 3, then ask your manager, make sure that it's okay with your manager, so that we can confirm it's not going to impact your ability to do your job, and that you're still going to be safe, secure, and have access to Wi-Fi. Then you're able to do that, but you just need to forfeit your 20% markup so that you fall back down into bucket 2, but then you're free to live in bucket 2 or bucket 3.
Right.
So an example would be, I'm going to make up a fictitious job. I'm going to say that at Kraken, we've decided that we're going to hire 3 Kraken huggers, and their job is to go around in the world and spread Kraken love by hugging everybody. Let's say that because sometimes people don't like getting hugged, or sometimes they have to hug people they don't want to hug. Let's say that we're going to pay this job well, and then this job gets paid $100,000 a year for a bucket 2 city. So let's say we're going to hire 3 people. Let's say we hire one person in Stockholm. Okay, bucket 2, so it's $100K. We're going to hire another person in Kansas City in the United States. Okay, it's a bucket 2 again. Okay, $100K. And then let's say that the third person, we say, okay, well, we really need to spread Kraken love at the headquarters in our, headquarters cities. That is San Francisco. And so that's a bucket 1 city. Okay, so what we would do is we would do a 20% markup on bucket 2 rate, which is $100,000. $100,000 times 120%. $120,000. Okay, the hugger in San Francisco gets $120,000, and then they know if they ever want to move away, they're able to make sure that's cool with their manager. But then they would drop down to $100K no matter where they moved, whether that is Halifax in Canada, or it's in Hong Kong, or it's in Sydney, Australia, or wherever they might go. They would that's fine if their manager says it is, and then they drop down to 100K. So this approach we take with cost of living with these 3 buckets, it's very simple. It doesn't require that we have to get into little nitty-gritty arguments with people about exactly what is the accurate cost of living of their precise town and village. We avoid all of that mess, and then we also avoid needing to monitor and surveil our own people in terms of making sure that we know whenever they move or where they're going, or approving of if they want to move to a new city that's a 20% increase in cost of living, and so we need to decide now if the company's comfortable with increasing their pay by 20%. So we don't deal with any of that. Krakenites are happier, Kraken is happier, everybody wins, and there's just a really intuitive, easy to understand philosophy for the cost of living. We're still factoring it in to a degree of this compensation philosophy. The number one criticism is, oh, well, you're like, the company's not saving as much money as it could. Like, oh, you're paying all devs Silicon Valley rates. Oh, like most cities in the world, almost all cities in the world, except for like whatever a handful is that's considered bucket 1 or bucket 3, they're all paid the same. Like, you could be paying so many people so much less. You don't have to pay devs all Silicon Valley rates, or like you're basing pay on internal benchmarking. Well, there might be people who are willing to work less than what you think they're worth. That's really the only like main or initial criticism of this, and the explanation is easy. Our goal in the compensation philosophy is not to cheat people. We're not trying to get talent as cheaply as possible. We're trying to get the best talent there is and to pay them well and pay them fairly and to treat them like people and not
Hmm.
and not human capital or, objects that we're trying to get the best deal on. And so what we
Hmm.
do is every time we hire somebody, every time we approve of a compensation request, we ask ourselves, this is the gut check that we perform to make sure we're staying true to our compensation philosophy. With every single new hire, we ask ourselves before that offer is extended to you, if all of the compensation data of Krakenites was shared with all Krakenites tomorrow, roughly how many people would be pissed off? And we know
Hmm.
that we're continuing to do a good job when the answer is, and it's been for years, the answer is very few people will be pissed off. And it's just because it's unavoidable for some people being pissed off. There's always going to be some people who want to believe that they are contributing more value than they actually are to a company, right? That's unavoidable.
Hmm.
But we really try to keep that to a minimum. And yeah, we don't let the compensation offer go through unless we've confirmed that this compensation data, along with all of the others, if it was shared with all Krakenites tomorrow, very few people, minimum people, would be pissed off tomorrow, and that Kraken would not have to go scrambling to make a bunch of compensation changes, that management could have one-on-ones with people and could talk to people and could say, if to the few people who are upset, hey, I know you're upset. I'm sorry you're upset, but like, let me explain why your compensation actually makes perfect sense
Yep.
and why it's fair.
Yep.
And it's really great because when we have hired people, we've heard really positive feedback. Candidates say that when we explain our compensation philosophy to them, that they feel like it's very refreshing and that they understand that this is a reflection of who we are as a company, and they've already gotten vibes from what type of culture we have, and that our comp philosophy is in line with the impression they've gotten about who we are and what we value and how we treat people. And we've had job candidates who, and remember, we're extending offers without knowing what they are currently getting paid or what they've gotten paid in the past. We've had job candidates who happily accept offers, and they say, like, I'm happy to accept. I'm so excited about working at Kraken. Like, just like FYI, this is X amount less than what I'm currently making, but like, I'm actually really excited about joining.
Yeah.
And like, there's things this company offers that my current place doesn't offer and other
Hmm.
companies don't offer in terms of fulfillment and just like match to their personality and values and interests.
Yeah. We see this actually like a lot. They might have been making twice as much where they were. is what they're making at Kraken, but they joined the company because they want to work on something new and something that's helping the world and making a difference. And to them, it's it's not so much about the money as it is about doing something meaningful with their life. Not everybody is in that kind of a position where they can take that kind of a pay cut, but I think it's really interesting to see some people coming from some very high paying roles and willing to take a dramatic pay cut to come work in this industry and at our company.
We've had people like entrepreneurs who they were running their own company and they chose to just to not just but they chose to be one of many Krakenites.
I should say I'm talking about cash. Actually, these guys all get you get a generous amount of equity, and they may be seeing that as a great investment. So maybe they're thinking like about a 10-year plan. Maybe they're thinking, well, if I get this amount of equity at Kraken and I stay there for 10 years and we 10 times the value of the company while I'm there, then oh, actually maybe I'm making a lot more than I would be at my old financial services job, even though they were paid a lot of cash. Yeah.
Yes, so just isolating cash, there are people who happily, ecstatically join Kraken, even though it's less cash, and in cases it's been significantly less cash than what they were currently making or what they can easily go make at another place too.
Hmm.
And it's because they saw something special in Kraken, and they feel like holistically, not just pay, but taking pay as a factor, I'm going to be happier here. I'm going to make a bigger impact here.
Yeah.
And they choose to do it and they're happy about it. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, there's also people who an offer's extended and they say, yes, yes, I accept. And then they also mention, I was getting paid much less.
Right.
And those moments are great too, because it feels so good to be able to say to that person, like, hey, like, no need to like thank us. Like, we're paying you what we expect your contribution to be worth to us at Kraken.
Hmm.
And in those moments, it feels really good as a company to be like, yeah, I'm paying this person what they should get paid. They haven't been paid as well as they should be. They've been underpaid, in our opinion, depending on the circumstance, right?
Hmm.
And it makes you feel really good as a company, those
Yeah.
moments where you see like, yes, like we make the choice to treat our people well. Fairly is key here. Fairly. So and yeah, and so I love that fact. And I love the fact that as a company, we can talk about we have not we haven't made a decision like, oh yeah, we want to make our compensation data public information, but I've had conversations with you about it before, and I've had conversations with others about it. I like and appreciate that even though we haven't made that decision, because that's like we need to put a lot of time and energy and thoughtfulness into that decision if we are ever to do that. But I like that we can have that conversation because our compensation data is clearly following a philosophy. It's not like every little aspect and like micro detail of our compensation data is perfect and exactly as we want it. But overall, I am glad that as a company we can say if this compensation data went like public to the company or to the world, we can say, yes, this fulfills our philosophy
Yeah.
and we pay people fairly.
Yeah, and I think we're really kind of on the cutting edge of this. I think you're starting to see more companies start to adopt a similar philosophy of, not, I think it's actually illegal in California now to ask for previous compensation. So, that's at least been recognized as something that's not great for candidates. But also, I think we're kind of at the forefront of this globalization of knowledge work, and I think you will start to see this convergence of pay for knowledge work globally. And it's going to matter a lot less where people are as companies become more and more remote. And so I think you'll see these people in the lowest wage areas, as long as they've got the skills, you'll see their incomes come up dramatically. On the other hand, I think that's going to put some downward pressure on the people in the most expensive parts of the world. Either they will be priced out by foreign competitors as the rates come down broadly, or maybe they'll move to a cheaper area to live, to be competitive. But I think coming into this, the people that are living, that have the skills, that are living in a low cost area of the world, have a really great advantage, and have an opportunity to work at these remote companies and do really well, relative to what their local opportunities would be.
It is a beautiful thing that we allow our Krakenites to roam freely and to work, in various places around the world, and to travel and to see the world and to visit one another. With the compensation philosophy, one last thing. Our approach with this is the same for a lot of things. We think long term. So we're absolutely cognizant of the fact that in the short term, we might spend a little bit more money than we need to on paying people salaries. But in the long run, we expect, and we've seen, I think, lower turnover, higher morale. We try to discourage people from talking about compensation just because it can probably only do bad or harm than good. But I hear about people talking about it and nobody's mad. And it's because we've already done a lot of thinking to make sure with every new offer we push out, we ask ourselves, how would everybody at the company feel if they found out about this? And so
Mhm.
we are thinking long term. We want to treat people right. We want to treat people fairly. We want to treat them with respect. We don't want to play mind games. We want to pay them fairly. We want to acknowledge and accept that people might talk about things, and a clear philosophy is more easily maintained than an arbitrary, messy uh, compensation philosophy. And so, for all these reasons, we have made the conscious decision to think long term with our compensation philosophy and do right by our people.
Yep.
Number 10, most Krakenites love working here and they don't ever want to work anywhere else. So there's no company where everyone that has ever worked there is happy and it was a great match, right? That is not possible. And likewise at Kraken, we for sure have gotten better over time at identifying what person is the right fit for Kraken and what makes most sense. But I am really proud to say that in the you started Kraken 7 years ago. In the 7 years or the 5 years that I've been here, that the majority of Krakenites have really loved it here and have felt so strongly to say things like they want this to be their last job because they love it so much. They don't ever want to work anywhere else. They've never worked anywhere like this before, and they've worked at great companies before. They really like Jesse, our CEO and co-founder, and they respect him and admire him, and they can relate to him and trust him. That Kraken is good to its people and treats its people right. The Kraken's making a difference versus, like Jesse explained earlier, we're making a difference in the world first and foremost, versus just blindly maximizing profits. That's a consideration. That's an important consideration, but not the end all be all. That Kraken has values, which is respectable and admirable. Kraken is, for the most part, open and transparent with communication. It's authentic, it's true to who it is. Kraken knows what type of company it is, and what its goals are. People at Kraken are really nice. You want to be friends with the people you work with. And I think that's something we hire for. We learned early on that just because somebody seems smart or accomplished or like they get stuff done, we've learned the hard way that just because they get stuff done doesn't mean it's okay that they're a jerk. And that
Mhm.
no matter how much they get done, if you're a jerk, you will always create more work for others, then you can contribute yourself.
Yeah, this goes back to what I said earlier about creating drama, especially for me. If somebody they can be the most productive person in the company, but if they're creating problems with other people, um, I have to think about you might be productive, but how many productive people are going to walk out of here if you keep acting like a jerk, and how much time am I going to have to spend on dealing with placating people or dealing with responding to, issues that people have with you or whatever. So it's just never worth it. It is now I have a very short fuse with this. If I spot any red flags on this culture fit, or if I feel like somebody's a jerk, I think we said this on the last podcast, when someone shows you who they are, you got to believe them, because people can be a different person when they're talking to me because they know I'm the CEO. Um, so when I might get a glimpse, I might serendipitously like overhear a conversation, or someone at the company who I trust um, tells me they heard something that's very troubling. I don't need to know much more. I will make a decision, on the spot to let somebody go if I don't think that they're um, a good culture fit, and if I think they're going to start um, blowing up the great culture that we've built. It just takes one bad person. Really, it can be extremely toxic. One bad person can really spread a poison through the company that will affect many people and really damage the culture broadly. So I think as soon as you spot that, it's not worth taking any chances. You just got to get these people out of there and hopefully learn something, and hopefully, better identify this before you let them in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that people, our Krakenites, appreciate that we're protective of the culture, and I think Krakenites as a whole, we do think it's important, and we always want to get better at firing faster. So
Hmm.
other things that people tell us is that Krakenites they love working here because there's so many smart, motivated people.
Yeah.
They also like that Kraken creates an environment where you can nomad and you can travel and it's encouraged, and also you can relocate. Maybe you've always wanted to move, but you've always been handcuffed to a job, and then Kraken is like, hey, we want you to be happy and productive and fulfilled. So like if it doesn't impact your job and you'll be happier somewhere else, like by all means.
Yeah.
And then also Kraken is a really cool place because we've attracted a lot of like-minded people. And so there's a lot of people. It's really cool when you get to work with people who like the things you like and are interested in the things that you're interested in.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you said about smart people, um, there are some of the smartest people I've met in my life work at Kraken, and it is so awesome to get to work with these people and um, just to like see the ideas that they have and to learn from them. That's one of the coolest things for me is I feel like every day I'm learning something new, and the people at the company are teaching me things. Um, and it's super cool.
Okay, and that is 1 through 10, the top 10 qualities of what it's like to work at Kraken. To recap, number 1, the crypto industry is all consuming and it's rooted in values like security, privacy, personal freedom, and civil liberties. It's good if you're also interested and passionate about protecting these values. Number 2, maintaining work life balance at Kraken is something that you will either need to be good at or become good at because it is a little bit of a challenge. Number 3, Kraken is very diverse and we try to be open minded. And so, if you like being surrounded by people who are a little bit different from you in every way you can imagine, but you're all tied together by the values that you share and the mission that you're all working towards, then you're really going to like it here. Number 4, if we had to say, Kraken is more introverted than it is extroverted. And so, depending on where you're going to work from, if you're working from an office or not, then you might have less in-person socialization than you normally do, but there might be benefits to that you haven't fully expected. And so it's good to think about that. And if you're applying for a job with Kraken, have a conversation with the hiring manager about that. Number 5, everybody at Kraken has to work hard. So no one is really allowed to phone it in or go through the motions or do the bare minimum. Everybody, no matter what role you're coming into, is expected to prove themselves and to, check egos at the door, or, impressive backgrounds, and to really dig in, bite off a lot, and help do their part in helping us achieve this mission. Number 6, Kraken is a hyper growth company in a hyper growth industry. And one of the things that comes along with that is that we are underdeveloped in certain areas and still building out processes. But number 7, it works really well at Kraken because our Krakenites give Kraken and our leadership team the benefit of the doubt, and they trust that decisions that are made are being made to protect clients and protect the team and to fulfill our greater mission. And even if not everyone agrees with every decision that's made, we still trust the company to be on the right track and doing the right thing. Number 8, the Kraken personality can be described as passionate yet informal. A good way to understand the Kraken culture, I think, is to understand Jesse's personality. So the Kraken personality, it is changing the world and it's very passionate, but then at the same time, it's true to who it is. It's modest, it's humble, it's down to earth. It's all about speaking simply, being intuitive, and creating minimal drama and being very low maintenance. We really don't have a lot of tolerance for or a lot of comfort for ego or selfishness, greed, arrogance, manipulation, drama, gossip, conflict, or high maintenance, because all of these things at our company, these things are just going to make you and others unproductive. Number 9, we have a really great compensation philosophy that we've had for years, and it's all about treating people with respect and paying them fairly. And number 10, most Krakenites absolutely love it here, and they don't want to ever have to work anywhere else. And it's a good thing that they feel that way because a lot of people say that they worry. A lot of Krakenites tell us that they worry if they ever have to work anywhere else, that they're going to be miserable because this company is so exciting and everybody gets along so well and everyone is so motivated and loves collaborating. And so they're a lot of people are just worried that anything after this is going to be a step down. So, if you are applying for a job with Kraken right now or you're in the interview process, then I hope that this was helpful and gave you some insight into whether you would really like it here or whether maybe we're not the right company for you. And if we're not the right company for you, that is totally okay. And we encourage you to reconsider your interest in the role and to maybe think of a better company or role for yourself, because we, at the end of the day, we are happy if you're happy. And if it sounds like, based on everything you've heard, that you're not going to be fulfilled at Kraken or you're not going to be the greatest fit, then we encourage you to go with your instinct. And every person we hire, we want them to really love it here. We want them to be happy for 5 years or more and for it to be a great long-term fit. And we want the best for you. So trust your instinct, and hopefully this was helpful. If you are a Krakenite, then I hope that all of this was pretty intuitive to you and you definitely agree with all of it. If you're a Krakenite and things change, your lifestyle changes, the life phase that you're in changes, your interests change, your life demands, outside of work change. If you're a Krakenite and you ever feel like you ever feel like maybe it's not as great of a match as it once was or as you hoped it would be, then please, we encourage you to talk to your manager and let them know how you're feeling, because managers in almost all cases are going to be so thankful and appreciative that you're letting them know, because they want you to be happy and productive. And if you're not, then they want to know and they're going to want to help work with you on a solution. And so you and your manager can have that conversation. And in almost all cases, the manager is going to be totally happy with and comfortable with working out a transition plan. In that way, everybody wins. You're able to be transparent about how you're feeling and be upfront about transitioning out of the company. And then for the manager, they're just super appreciative that you were candid and comfortable with letting them know how you feel, so that they have a heads up and they can start preparing things for themselves as well. So it's just sort of
Mhm.
like everybody wins. And so we, yeah, highly encourage that. Like, if we want Kraken to think that Krakenites are great fits, and we want the Krakenites to feel like Kraken is a great fit for them.
Yeah, I have a kind of a funny story about this that really this is like young, early in my career of running a company and having my own employees. Um, I had an employee who was, this was back at my last company, where everyone was remote, and this guy was showing up like very late to work consistently, and he'd been warned about it several times, and finally I just confronted him and I said, "Hey, like, what's going on? Like, why are you continuously late?" And he said, "Well, actually, I have a class at this time now." He was in college. "I have a class at this time now, and really, I don't have the time to do this job anymore. And I was just waiting for you to fire me." And I said, "Well, had you told me this, just what you said, I could have worked with you, or at least, it could have been a discussion. Of course, I wouldn't just fire someone on the spot who was upfront with me about that, but in doing that, what he probably didn't realize at the time was that he was burning a bridge that might have been valuable to him later. And I've hired people who I've worked with in the past. If I have a good experience with you, even if you have to move on and do something else, or, like you said, your life situation changes. Now you have classes at that time instead of, and you can't work that shift anymore, whatever. Um, if you are upfront with your manager, you talk to your manager, you give them a heads up, and you don't just ghost them and stop showing up to work. The door might be open again later for you, or if you ever feel like you want to come back to work, that opportunity might be there. And if you need a recommendation for a future job, you want your future employer to be able to call your former employer and get a positive recommendation of you, and not have your former employer just say, "That guy just stopped showing up. I don't know what happened to him. He he totally ghosted me, and you know he totally dropped the ball and left a bunch of other people hanging. We don't know what happened to him." You can work out a plan. It doesn't have to be like a hostage situation where you feel like as soon as you tell us that you're not happy, like you're going to be fired. That's totally
Yeah.
it's totally not it. We want people to have um, a smooth transition out, and to go on and find something that's going to be great for them. We realize, it's when you go to work for a company, it's really about the fit. It's not always just about that was a bad company or that was a bad employee. Usually it's like when you're in a relationship with another person, um, it just might be a bad match. Situations change over time. So, I think as long as you are willing to communicate, then you can work something out. You can hold on to those relationships. You can keep the door open for the future. And yeah, you don't need to feel like you are trapped there. Employment should feel like it's voluntary. And if you don't want to work somewhere anymore, I think most companies, any rational company, would be happy to have a conversation about it and work on a transition plan.
Yes, I totally agree that company is as unique as an individual as a human being. And so if every every individual is unique and then the company is unique, an individual at a company, that relationship is as unique in itself as that person forming a relationship with any other human being, whether it's, a working relationship or like a business, like business working relationship or something else. Like, and so I think that, yeah, I think it's like a fallacy when people don't like a company, they're quick to think something was wrong with that company. It's also tempting, I think, for managers when they don't like somebody it's tempting, like something's wrong with that person. That's a bad person. The truth is that in most cases, it's not that the company did something wrong or the person did something wrong. In most cases, it wasn't the right match. And that for that person, there's a better company out there. And for that company, there's a better person out there. And so I think there's this fallacy if a person does not feel like it's a great match, instead of seeing it that way in sort of a neutral way where like no one's to blame, they see maybe blame in the company and they are like mad, like, why doesn't this company conform to me more? And that's not realistic. And then I think there's also another fallacy of people feel, oh my gosh, this company only is happy with me if I want to work here. That's not true. Like, we've had people who have, for whatever reason, they want to go start their own company. We've had people, or whatever it might be, uh, they've left and they handled themselves in such a way where they, let us know up front with, with ample notice, hey, so I'm interested in doing this other thing. And they handled it well and they communicated well. And then they're like, I want to make sure I don't leave you guys in a bad spot. I want to thank you and I want to be appreciative and acknowledge, like all the great experiences I've had here. So like, what can I do to help like find my replacement or get things in order before I go? And they're engaged and they're not checked out. And, they want to make sure that they're helping to truly tie up loose ends. And then those people are great. We love them. Even though we're sad to see them go, they become lifelong friends of Kraken and
Mm-hmm.
we help them out. If we ever have the opportunity to, they help us out. We encourage them to come back to Kraken. Sometimes they come back to Kraken. Please do not think that if you are unhappy or you're thinking about something else, that means that a company is going to be mad at you. That's not the case. And yes, it's very important to not burn bridges and also like just to be decent towards a company. I think sometimes it comes across as if people want companies to do so much for them, but then they don't really feel obligated to do anything for the company in return. And so I think, if a company is going out of its way to treat you fairly and want to do right by you and treat you with respect, and it's not perfect at all, but it really makes a concerted effort to do those things better than the average company, then when you have an opportunity to do right by the company, like do it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a decent thing to do. And yeah, so at Kraken, I've worked with people. It depends on the circumstances. And so have the conversation with your manager. It's the manager most likely in almost all cases is going to say, thank you for letting me know. They're going to be happy. They're going to be sad to see you go, but they're going to be happy that you did the brave thing and the noble thing and told them how you were feeling before it was too late. Don't bottle it up and wait until it's too late. Let them know as soon as you start feeling unhappy. I have never had a situation where somebody let me know how they were feeling and maybe they were interested in something else, or maybe, their life has changed in a certain way. Anytime that has happened for me, there's always been a great solution where both the company and the Krakenite were super happy with the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Go down that path. Like, that is a good path. That is a winning path.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what it's like to work at Kraken, and I hope that was very helpful. We love Kraken. We love Krakenites. Our people make this company. It means a lot to us to find good matches. Hope this was helpful. And if you're interested in working at Kraken, please go to kraken.com and click our careers link. if what we described sounds like you, then please apply today. Apply today because we want to meet you.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Christina. All right. I'm going to turn off the cameras. We all good?
Wait, let me do a little bit of ASMR. Join Kraken. Join Kraken. Kraken is the place to be. Listen to the dog. Okay, get down. Let's go. I'm finished with ASMR. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This wraps up another episode of How to Grow a Decacorn. Please make sure to leave a comment, tweet us, tell others about it, like, subscribe, and tune in to the next episode.